mask on and take it off?
Take it off.
That's quite okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's a true pleasure to be here, and always is to step in your own shoes and be a part of this big puzzle of life. So, as I speak here today, I'm not just speaking to you, but I'm speaking to myself as well. So all that goes is the walk the talk and talk the walk. It goes hand in hand. So how's everybody doing? Good. We're going to be celebrating a special day in the U.S. dates of importance tomorrow. It's Labor Day. And definitely this lecture or this conversation is not about Labor Day, but it definitely is a starting point, because that day was created to appreciate the economics and civic progress of our country and where we are, right? So as a country, we see things in a big group, but we can also break it down to an individual level, which is us. So tomorrow, when you go on and enjoy the Labor Day and prepare for family, friends, and feast, it could be a nice contemplative time also to see how your own personal progress has come into place. You know, economically, financially, personally, you can just take it in just about any direction is there. So that would be a good way to say, you know, this is where I am, and let me reflect on 1700 years ago where I was as a human person, right? So you have a point of assessment of where we are. And within all that being said, we have such a beautiful part of our spiritualist or spiritualism that is called the philosophy of it. And a lot of philosophy comes from little parts of life, because our bodies are still life, our breath, our living is all part of life. So we have to embrace that reality, no matter how sensitive and empathic we are. Still, at the end of the day, we're all humans. And within that human life, we have to deal with this body, flesh, the needs, wants, desires, etc. So where are we taking this into the aspect of understanding? So the philosophy within spiritualism has a good emphasis on natural and spiritual laws. The words itself describe what they are: natural laws pertaining to nature, spiritual laws pertaining to spirit. But this is nothing just being saying, are we all living very mindfully? So as the nudge comes into talking about what we are wanting to talk about today, we're going to be discussing the law of polarity, or law of opposites, or law of contrast. So we have to understand from that perspective, right? So the theory would be like attracts like, opposite does attract too. But if we take the law of magnetism, which is a physical law, says, you know, opposite attracts, like poles repulse. So if you put south pole and south pole, or north pole and north pole, or that aspect, it pushes back. But the north and south attract. So that's law of magnetic value. This works completely differently. But the law of opposites pertains, you know, let's say, for example, sound. It has low sound or high sound, right? There's a high pitch and a low pitch. So there's a polarization of that. Same with heat. It can be very hot, it can be not so much hot. So there's a polarization of that is there. So within that, there's a law of opposites is there. Now in our lives, in the abilities to create what we create, we have to go through this polarization. You know, we set standards to what it can be for us in our own minds, in our own existence. Then within that setting of that standard, we all have to go through the aspect of polarization. Does it really came close to what I wanted it to be? And that hit and miss becomes the polarization of that experience. But the law of opposites says, you know, everything that is happening, we can measure it to a certain aspect, right? We can give it a word, we can give it a feeling, we can give it a quantity, we can give it an amount of measure. But within the law of opposite, it doesn't really say night and day or that sort of extreme polarization. but it says the laws of success or law of manifestation. Once you step into that realm, it will take you through these polarizations or having some contrast in life. You know, we were having a wonderful piece of music being played, but our friend Ron was thrown off the key. That's a polarization in realism, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, this would make a good example of the story. It's happening. You know, I don't even have to, you know, think of something out there, and as I'm listening, so we observed that, right? That's a part of that. You know, everything was fine, and all of a sudden, there was a little blip there, but we all took it in stride. Humor always helps. If you take the pain in your life with a pinch of humor, not pinch of salt, the pinch of humor, that pinch of humor has a lot of ability to strengthen us, you know. Bad things already happening, how much you can beat yourself down. So that little pinch of hope and humor takes us one notch into, maybe things are not that bad. So that humor was nice. And that just brought it in that little part, and I was like, so this is great. But that's what polarization do. You know, you're progressing towards an objective, an aim, a goal, and you have a little detour that is not satisfactory to what you're wanting it to be. Enjoy it. Now the whole point is to enjoy it. You know, we say, you know, this life is about lessons. Yeah, there are lessons, but what are you doing with it? The another aspect of my observation sitting from this side of the room is one of our friends didn't have the music sheet, but our friend did push a little forward, leaned into and read somebody else's sheet and sung, right? And that's the whole part of us, you know, where life is moving in one direction. Are we choosing to be like, oh, I don't have this in front of me, I can't do anything without it. I've done that many parts. I've given myself justification to say I am not at a given station of my life because I don't have this. You know, we all wait to have a perfect scenario and setup to create a starting point. But in my observation, it was so beautiful that just leaning forward into something that allows to feel connected with what was happening. So you understand, you know, life is life. It always happens. And our spiritualism is a religion that says there's a continuity of life. You know, we have a physical body, we're living, breathing, bleeding, cuts, bruises, etc. The afterlife is not much different. We lose the flesh and bones, we lose that cues, but the rest of our consciousness is progressing from that perspective. So there is such a strong, valuable emphasis in our lives of understanding this is me, this is one side of polarization. The afterlife is the other side of polarization. How do I make things enjoyable between this and that? That bridge that will be created for me to cross over at that point, what am I taking from there? So let's talk about a small, other realistic example of polarization. So who is enjoying 2020? It's actually, you raise your hand, I mean, I would be like really questioning in my mind. But yes, there's a point to that, you know. And what I'm wanting to add here for just a brief moment is, if anybody is interested in Chinese zodiac, and I knew this earlier, but this has been my constant on my mind. If you understand Chinese zodiac, this is the year of, anybody knows what year it is?
Rat.
Year of the rat.
Oh no, I'm alright. The Chinese zodiac.
So let me just expand. We're talking about polarization, right? So this is the year of the rat, but if you think of rat, who gets excited? Unless it's in a very contained environment, in a lab, or in a cage where it has everything neat and clean, who gets excited about that? Not really, right? But if you think in terms of, let's just expand, agriculture, they're a nuisance, right? They are like, that carries disease. And this is not about good or bad. They do have their plus points, but what I'm wanting to say is, understand the polarization. The time that we're living in this year is mandated by a certain concept. And for me, you know, it's not, am I trying to justify why this year is bad? No, but you have to understand there is symbology and reality of life that permeates at all times. So if you think from that perspective, so we are possibly on our lowest human frequency and vibration with so much unrest going on of different shapes and different forms. But we have to just understand this, right? We have to just go through this because we can't do anything. It's still going to be the year of the rat till it's done. A few more months to go. I was very happy on September 1st, like, oh, 4 more months, 5 more months. We're going to be like, okay, we'll be done with this. Now guess what? The other side of my polarization was the next year is the year of the ox. Now what does the ox represent or there, you know? Within those things there are different elements, you know. Chinese philosophy believes the wood, all the elements. The wood, fire, metal, and water, etc. So there's still the year of the ox, right? If you think of the concept of just the animal itself, it's very calm, docile, it's consistent, it has a pattern. You know, it is the best friend of man because it can give food, milk, also help him in the field, etc. So what we're looking forward into the next year on this polarization understanding is we're heading into a constructive time. Whatever we will endure in this year, we're not just like going to get worse, perhaps we're going to get better and better. Coming together when we start to emerge out of this, there's going to be a lot of unification and global unification where people will understand, global economies will come together, and so forth, to understand we're heading into a different part of this polarizing experience for ourselves. But the question is to understand. Now, the natural laws say, let's say for example, we all have certain gifts in our life, right? Some of our friends, I understand, they are healers. Some of them are into music. Some of them are teachers and educators, and they understand medicine. You have your own unique gift, right? But to understand how can you amplify those gifts in your life is to say, I accept what I have, what is naturally mine, prevails in my life without any unnatural influences, right? Some are good writers, some are good thinkers, some can think, but they cannot formulate how to put things in words, but they're a good thinker, they can discuss ideas. We have to understand embracing our strength is the beautiful, beautiful part. Right here in our presence, if I may, we have such a strong example of strength here, enduring a certain life situation and condition, and sitting right here in front of us, among us, is a strong example of the resilience us as humans have. Now, in the spirit world, I feel resilience is not of big importance. We don't need it, right? Our progression is much different in a more constructive, positive way. Our experiences, our likes and dislikes might continue, but the resilience is not needed because we don't have to endure the peer pressure or the pressure of the society or pressure of life per se as we have to while we're living. So to understand this, polarization always stays. The laws of opposite is always going to prevail. However, the good way to understand is if I accept where I am, that is the one key that can shift all the reality. Instead of thinking like, life is not great. Yeah, it is not great, but can I accept it? Can I stop fighting with that? Right? So a part of our journey in understanding as humanity or spiritualist or wherever your belief and understanding is to accept where you are. Life may not be the best. It may be the awesomest in your experience, but accept wherever you are, accept wherever we are. A very quick, small thought process. Driving 70 miles an hour just 2 days ago, and my beautiful car says, oh, I'm not going to drive right in the middle of the highway. The semis and everything is just very close to a big transit in Jacksonville. So guess what? Car said, no, I can't do anything. So I pulled over as best possible, and all I heard was, turn off your car. I turned it off. I sat there for maybe 2 minutes. Turn it back on. Car went back running. But now, if I would have panicked or if I would have just lost myself in there, like, yeah, we all react differently, that is the reality. But it was just a matter of that knowing, that click, I have come to understand, and we all have that place, the gut feeling that guides us in there. I had to learn to override what Joy's behavior was a few years ago. Now I'm like more in the rhythm, so when I heard just turn it off, so I didn't do anything, I just pulled over, I turned it off. There were people honking, but when I put on my blinkers, they stopped. They knew there was something. I was not trying to be silly in the big busy day. But nonetheless, the story, for me, that was like, I could have reacted differently, but the choice that was made was just like, okay, listen, you're already here, what are you going to do about it? So that progression was there, and that's how life can be for a lot of us. Now, listening to the spirit world, I feel over my last 16, 17 years, maybe the rest of my whole life, I've always been somewhere being in tune with myself to know where I am. My mother had a big supporting system, as she always encouraged me to be out of the place that I'm not supposed to be. So that was a big part of the journey. But anyhow, as I think of the polarization, the situation could have been pretty far worse, but things went out fine. But the point was, I always listen. The Spirit tells me to go left, I am going left. Even if it's not on my destination pathway, I am going there. So that's my journey, but that's my commitment. But it has given me good learning lessons, good results, to something that nurtures me at all times. So understanding where you are in life, the station of your life, you have the ability to change the outcome. Perhaps by starting, let me accept where I am. I can then go about doing what is the next best thing. So sometimes force is great, sometimes it is not so great. Once again, it's a polarization. Sometimes our presence alone is mightier than anything else. So be present with yourself at all times to understand that. So now, the thought is, like attracts like, and opposites too, but what about this? So when you say like attracts like, yes, similar interests, similar activities, you find your tribe. Your vibe attracts your tribe. You find that tribe. But why does opposite attract in the human value? Somebody is far more flexible and stronger than I am. That could be my point of attraction. It's like, oh, there's something about that I want, I wish to be in myself. And that's why the opposite attracts in the human value, I believe. I don't have the proof of it, but I feel my theory is not so bad. Because if somebody's a good cook and I don't know how to cook well, guess what? That somebody will cook. I will enjoy the cooking. Right? That somebody may not have the ability to lift 50 pounds weight, but guess what? I may have the ability to pull 75-pound weight. And that opposites becomes a nurturing balance there. A lot of times our opposites are fueled by the aspects of ego, and that becomes very contorted. And that's where the separation of distortion comes into place. But when it's like-minded people, how often you have said, we can just be good buddies and friends, but there's not much new to discover because we like the same things. That's enjoyable. But sometimes the opposite creates adventure. The oppositions in life create starting places. That cracks and the crevices takes out new shoots, brings a lot of light that you need at that time in your life. So why be disappointed wherever life is? To understand that nurturing is a part of our makeup of who we are. And within these polarizations, that nurturing is always happening. The way we receive it, the way we understand it, that's how and where we're going to grow. Right? I'm sure we all have heard, why are you so upset about something? Why are you so angry all the time? Or why are you always in that mode? And then, I've also heard, how can you be always happy and smiling, Why does nothing ever bother you? Guess what? There's a natural law of choices. We all get to choose. Because all that choices leads into the natural law of consequence and cause and effect. Whatever we choose, that's how we're going to respond. So I choose to be happy or I choose to be sad will in turn tell me what kind of tribe I'm going to attract for myself. So to understand, the little nuances go on, because then right here, there could have been a moment of what I'm sharing is, we have all had the moment of despair. You know, we've all felt mediocre or less than that. Or we have been made to feel mediocre or less than that. But should we choose to stay there? That's the whole point of understanding is, where do I go from here? But that starts from accepting where you are, where we are, where I am. But where do I go from here? That's the whole, that's the spark, that's the excitement. So we fell off the key, but we had no idea that we couldn't enjoy it with a sense of laughter. Ron may not feel so good about it, but he joined in the laughter. He made a choice to laugh, right? Right? We all have the ability to be hard on ourselves, right? We can fixate ourselves in a certain way, and then if we are not making progress, we take it in our egos and we become hard on ourselves. But still, we all have the simple fact available to us, accepting where we are. So this difficult, troubling times, if we choose to accept 4 more months, it becomes so much easier, right? If we say we don't have a clue when it's going to all end or when it's going to start to simmer down or slow down and go back to normal. This is the new normal. But that doesn't have to be the forever new normal. This is it for now. So we do the best we can, we understand. Now the part for me is like, we all have figured out, so coming from a different language, a different culture, sometimes when this is funny, because sometimes I have to almost like lip read. You know, some people talk too fast or they have too much slang, and it's hard for me to understand what is being said. Sometimes I talk too fast, and people just zone out, but that's okay. But now what's going on? If I'm listening to somebody, we have no idea what somebody's doing behind their mask. You know, you could be sitting around, right? Or just making a face like, oh, he's like a little out there. But the part is like, oh, that raises my curiosity. Now I have to learn to read the eyes. You know, one eye is downward and the other one's upward. What does that mean? See, that's a sense of an excitement there, right? It makes difficult times so much easier. Right? So the embracing of the journey is like, how can I make it like, what's going on? That curiosity is always the good place to be. Good place to be. So understanding there is a part of all of us that doesn't like the struggle. There's a part of all of us that wants things easy. Nothing is easy. When it says free, it is not. It'll get you one way or the other. So to understand, you know, you do your part. We do our part. We say it in our healing prayer. We understand within our lives. As long as we're doing our part, we are assured that we will make our mark in this world. And that's has been a constant learning, being a medium, being a healer, to understand every day is a new day. There is no cookie-cutter, scripted way of doing this life. You have to accept every day, every morning, every evening, to accept wherever that station is. That is our reality. That's exactly where we are in that time. We're not more, we're not less. That's exactly where we are. So the manifestation. Now the part of that intrigues is how we are going about it. Because that's very important. It's everything, if you understand, everything is created twice. Nothing is created in one go. And I think this is an old phrase, an old understanding. Everything happens twice. The first time it happens in here, and the second time it happens out here. So anything that is we see here was a concept of somebody's mind. Somebody thought of the design of the pew, and then they put it outside. Now we are enjoying it. And that is a big part of our understanding is how you create things here, that's possibly how you're going to create outside. So to understand that nurturing of our soul or our personalities that's the fertilizer. That's where your thinking, our thinking is where the fertilization of things happens. To understand, to understand that part is there. Then what we have to also understand is the moment you sat in this chair or you entered this space, you have created a relationship. And not just this experience, but with everything that has ever participated here. Wherever these bricks came from, the lights came from, the pews, the tables, chairs, because these things were manufactured by hundreds of other people that were a part of this creation. Now we've all very quickly became a part of their experience. So everything has a relationship, and that's an important part of natural law understanding is the moment we step into an experience, it becomes a relationship. So to have the sensitivity to understand, whoever was here, their homes were fed, they were happy to be here. One person may not be happy to be here, or the two person was wanting to be off that day, but all that vibrations are becoming a part of us because we instantly created a relationship, maybe not so much consciously, but we're becoming a part of this. So what imprint we choose to leave today, as we sit here on these pews, because next week you may or may not be sitting in the same pews, you may be sitting in a different spot, a different place, but how the next person is going to create that relationship. Personal responsibility. I might be having a bad day, but that's okay. The moment I accept that as my reality, things become a little bit more calm, cool, and collected there. So understand, no matter where we go, we are creating relationships. How many times you use the aspect of gratitude to say, I'm thankful for this